During the early 1990s, in the wake of Gunpei Yokoi's Game Boy, Nintendo was looking for solid games to fill out the device's library. While the company had several internal successes with titles like Tetris, Super Mario Land, and Metroid 2: The Return of Samus, they also began looking to their collaborators to create new and interesting games for the handheld. Enter HAL Laboratory, one of Nintendo's second-party partners. Satoru Iwata, then president of HAL, had the idea of creating an entry-level video game so uncomplicated that anyone, regardless of their previous gaming experience, could pick it up and play all the way through. A design philosophy that would end up rippling through all aspects of the upcoming project. Iwata saw Nintendo's Game Boy as a perfect opportunity to create such a game, so he commissioned his staff to come up with ideas for the system. The winning pitch came from a designer and relative newcomer named Masahiro Sakurai, who was only 19 years old when his idea began development. Sakurai envisioned this game as a title called Twinkle Popo, which would see the titular hero Popopo saving his world from his rival DDD. Early on, the team had trouble settling on a final design for Popopo, so for the time being, Sakurai created a blob-like character to act as a placeholder until a more finalized design was hammered out. Somewhat ironically, Sakurai grew quite fond of his provisional design, and this placeholder would eventually become its final form. Its modesty stood out against other similar design-by-committee characters in the mascot wars of the 90s, and ended up gelling perfectly with Iwata's directive of simplicity. At some point during development, Popopo's name was also changed to Kirby, and the game's title to Kirby's Dreamland, for reasons that aren't entirely clear. Even Sakurai has said that he doesn't quite remember why they made the change. The only thing known for sure is that the name Kirby was chosen from a list of other alternatives because of the word's relative harshness in comparison to the character's soft design. That said, a couple of theories have become quite popular amongst whisperers on the internet. The first was that they named Kirby after the Ohio-based Kirby Company, a manufacturer of vacuums and other similar cleaning supplies. The second theory involved a lawyer named John Kirby, who successfully defended Nintendo from Universal Studios when they sued Nintendo over similarities between Donkey Kong and the characters and events of the film King Kong. Proponents of this idea suggest that Nintendo named the character after Mr. Kirby as a thank you for his service. Nintendo creative mastermind Shigeru Miyamoto has stated that, while this wasn't the only reason, it was at least partially the cause for the change. The only thing Kirby needed now was a final color for his official design. Sakurai wished for the character to be pink, while Miyamoto suggested he be yellow. Sakurai's pink preference ultimately won out, but Miyamoto's suggestion wasn't completely ignored either. Later games in the series would see a second player controlling an identical but yellow Kirby named Kibi. Interestingly, this discussion over Kirby's final color had an unintended consequence in the game's marketing outside of Japan. While Japanese copies of the game had the accurately pink Kirby on its cover, the finalized color choice wasn't clear to Nintendo's branches in the rest of the world. So, because the limited hardware of the Game Boy was unable to display color, the Kirby on the box in most regions is monochrome as he appears in the game. Following the trend of other games of the era, the plot of Kirby's Dreamland wasn't very complicated. The gluttonous, self-appointed King DDD had stolen all of the food from the denizens of Dreamland for a great feast, and it's up to Kirby to stop him. The straightforwardness of the story was only meant to provide context to the gameplay, which was the main priority for the development team. Under Iwata's directive of simplicity, Sakurai wanted Kirby's Dreamland to be perfectly designed so that beginners could play all the way through after picking it up. At the same time, he didn't want it to be so simple that it would alienate more advanced players. So, as a happy medium, the team implemented a rudimentary passcode system into the game, which offered more difficult or customizable versions of the campaign to play through. Satisfied with their work, the team moved towards finalizing the game for release. Kirby's Dreamland was released on April 27th, 1992 in Japan, and August 2nd, 1992 in North America, where it was the spark of a new franchise for Nintendo and HAL. By the end of 1995, it had sold an incredibly solid 1.3 million copies. Including its various re-releases and ports, it has sold over 5 million copies to date. Reception of the game was fairly positive, with critics praising its relaxing design and jovial atmosphere. Its equally lighthearted music, composed by Jun Ishikawa, was also well received, with the piece Green Greens becoming particularly iconic thanks to its inclusion in Sakurai's later title, Super Smash Bros. That said, the game's simplicity would become a point of contention, with many arguing that it often crossed the blurry line into boringness. However, the honesty of this title and HAL's new mascot stood out in an era dominated by cynically designed characters and games, and would end up becoming what would define the series. It didn't need to be something huge and complex, it only needed to be fun, and those expecting something else may have just been looking for it in the wrong place. Simplicity isn't inherently a bad thing, and that's an idea that the Kirby series would take head on.
Hey, what's up? Lee here. I hope you enjoyed this little look back at Kirby's Dreamland. If you did, please go hit that subscribe button for more content like this in the future. And if you have any suggestions for future retrospectives, please leave a comment below or tweet them at me at TefFirst. A huge thank you to my friend Jimmy for voicing this episode. He's known as Sunder here on YouTube, and he does these great game analysis videos with his series Levelhead. So please go check him out. He just did this great video about movement in Overwatch. It's the annotation linked on screen. It's totally worth it. Give it a click. I promise you'll enjoy it. Anyway, yeah, later, I'm out. Peace.